You're live, Claire.
All right, so good evening, everyone, again, and thanks for joining us here for another episode at Sharia Crime Stoppers. I'm Clare Lopez of Lopez Liberty, LLC. And thanks to Dick and Mary and everyone at Sharia Crime Stoppers and the United West for sponsoring us and sponsoring this program. Tonight, I thought what I would do is walk us through an article that I published this past week at Conservative HQ. Was the first place it was published. It was picked up and republished at other places too. You can also find it at the Citizens Commission on National Security. I think it also went up at the Canada Free Press. Yes, also at United West. It's called Joe Biden Calls for Jihad Against America. Yeah, he really did. No, he didn't know what he was doing, but that's par for the course at this point with this poor candidate. Here's what happened, and I think it's significant that we pay attention because this isn't just about Joe Biden or his, own qualifications or lack thereof for running for president. This has to do with a much broader issue of how the Islamic movement, and particularly here in the United States, the Muslim Brotherhood, has succeeded in infiltrating and influencing and co-opting this candidate, Joe Biden, and the Democratic Party. So back on the 20th of July, that's coming up on a couple Mondays ago, it was a webinar presentation that Joe Biden was giving from his home, I gather, that's what it looked like, to a group called the Million Muslim Votes Summit. And that event was sponsored by a Muslim Brotherhood organization, front group, called EMGAGE Action. Now, spoiler alert, we'll go through all this, but during this talk, which clearly was written for him, Joe Biden did not write this. He had no idea what he was saying. But in the speech, he literally called on American Muslims to wage jihad against America. So let's look at how that happened. Now, EMGAGE Action is a PAC, a political action committee, a Brotherhood-linked PAC. And it, by the way, endorsed Biden for president back this past April 2020. Now, EMGAGE Action's parent company, and this, stick with me because this is going to be a sequence of linkages back, and we'll summarize because it gets a little dizzying after a while, but stay with me here. So EMGAGE Action is the PAC. They hosted him for this talk. They endorsed him back in April. Now, EMGAGE Action's parent organization is called EMGAGE USA. Now, EMGAGE USA, that's with an M, yes, meaning for Muslim. Not Engage, but EMGAGE, right? So EMGAGE USA formerly went by a different name. It was called EMERGE USA when it was first founded. And EMERGE USA is an acronym, and it stands for Empowering, Motivating, and Educating Resourceful Grassroots Entities. That's quite a bit of a mouthful, so I can see why they might want to have changed the name other than obfuscating the trail. Now, EMERGE USA and EMGAGE USA, which succeeded it, they are front groups for CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, which of course is the US branch of Hamas, designated foreign terrorist organization. Hamas itself, of course, is the Palestinian or the Gaza branch of the original Muslim Brotherhood. And of course, as we know, CARE was named by the Department of Justice back in 2008 in the Holy Land Foundation Hamas terror funding trial as an unindicted co-conspirator, along with some 200 plus other entities that never went to trial. By the way, just insert here I've heard the question before, well, can't they just start the prosecutions back up again? Can't they just pick it up where they left off and go after all of these unindicted co-conspirators? Fortunately, no, they cannot, because the statute of limitations on material support to terrorism, and that's what the trial was about, material support to terrorism from the Holy Land Foundation, a sensible charity, right? Millions of dollars flowing to Hamas. That's what the trial was, material support to terrorism. And the statute of limitations for that is 8 years. So 2008, that trial concluded, past the date. In any case, let's go on here. So we can trace back EMERGE, EMGAGE, USA, back to the Brotherhood like this. Now, way back in November of 2006, down in Broward, Florida, a 501c3, a nonprofit organization, was registered, was founded, and it was called the Center for Voter Advocacy. And its mission was to promote Muslim candidates for elected office at every level. The founder of that group, Center for Voter Advocacy, was one Khurram Wahid. Now Wahid, was a past director of CARE Florida, and then later a legal advisor to CARE National. So this is how we can trace this thing back, through him, Khurram Wahid, back to CARE Florida and CARE National. Now, Wahid has been a very regular speaker on the Muslim Brotherhood talk circuit, if you will. Events sponsored by groups like the Islamic Circle of North America and the Islamic Society of North America. And so then after the Center for Voter Advocacy, Wahid moved on to become a co-founder of EMERGE USA. You see where we're going with this? And co-founder along with him was a young Brotherhood operative by the name of Farouk Mita. Farouk Mita, M-I-T-H-A, formerly served in the Obama administration from 2010 till 2011 as special assistant to the director of the U.S. Department of Defense Office of Small Business Programs. Isn't that great? Now, in August of 2014, EMERGE USA, that's when they changed their name to EMGAGE USA, and it's been EMGAGE USA ever since. The PAC is the offshoot or the partner of EMGAGE USA, the one that sponsored Joe Biden at this event that he spoke at. Now, many of the original EMERGE USA leadership figures, including Wahid and Mita, they simply moved straight over from EMGAGE or from EMERGE to EMGAGE USA seamlessly. It was simply a change in the name. It really wasn't a change in the organization or the leadership, as we can see, certainly with these two. So there then at EMGAGE USA, this is after 2014, Wahid served as chairman for a while, a number of years. And now if you go to the website, Wahid is listed as co-chairperson. Mita, meanwhile, is listed now at the website as a board member of EMGAGE USA. So interestingly, I think, and notably, 2014 was also the year that the Muslim Brotherhood, of course, under the aegis of the Turkish AKP, or Justice and Development Party, formed its first political umbrella group in the US, and that was called the USCMO, United States Council of Muslim Organizations, this umbrella group of the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States. CARE has a very leading role in there, but many others are part of it, like ICNA and MAS, Muslim American Society, and many others. Now, EMGAGE USA is one of the USCMO's key members, okay? Now, I know that was a kind of a dizzying sequence of linkages, so let's go back and just one by one, we'll just recap it all and make it very, very clear. So the first thing I would say is they're doing this on purpose, yes, to confuse everybody. And maybe we'll just lose the trail along the way somehow of how this goes back to the Brotherhood. But no, we're not going to let that happen. So first, there's the Muslim Brotherhood, founded in Egypt, 1928. Then comes Hamas. Hamas, the Gaza branch, Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, formed in 1987. They're in Gaza. The US branch of Hamas, CARE, was formed in 1993 to 94 in the US. So then through the continual leadership figure of Khurram Wahid, remember he comes out of CARE, Florida, we can then trace from EMGAGE USA that he co-founded I'm even mixing it up, from EMERGE USA that he helped to co-found, to EMGAGE USA, where he transferred over, simply moving from one to the next. And then, of course, to the PAC, this Political Action Committee, EMGAGE Action PAC, that sponsored Joe Biden and sponsored his talk this past July the 20th, a couple of weeks ago. Now, Farouk Mehta is not only on the board of directors of EMGAGE USA, per the website, which it is, EMGAGE USA, a key member of the Muslim Brotherhood's US political group, the USCMO. Farouk Mehta is also a senior advisor to Joe Biden. You see how this connects? This is concerning, I think. Now, let me go on to talk about something that really jumped out when Joe Biden was speaking at that event, the webinar event back on the 20th of July. So, among other things, and a lot of the media jumped on Joe Biden's announcement that he thinks there should be more Islam taught in the public schools. Well, I think so too, so long as they bring in Robert Spencer, John Guandolo, Steve Coughlin, Bill Warner, and maybe me. Then we'd be all set. But what jumped out at me beyond that was that Joe Biden quoted from a well-known hadith. Well, it's well known to many of us. I don't suppose Joe Biden could tell a hadith from the hole in the wall, but nevertheless, he quoted from one that is well known to many of us, and certainly to many, at least well-educated Muslims. And this hadith comes from the collection of Sahih Muslim, one of the two most authoritative of all the hadith scholars. The other one, of course, being Sahih Bukhari. And I suppose this hadith is at Sahih Bukhari as well. I just took it from Sahih Muslim. But I did that in part because the very brilliant and funny David Wood produced a very good video about this whole episode, and about the hadith and what the hadith means. So tip of the hat to David Wood, because I listened to that. It's like 27 minutes long, really well done. You know how he does. And he explained things that helped me understand where this came from. So let's quote the hadith, first of all, very quickly, which Joe Biden did in his talk. And here it is, quote, "Whoever among you sees an evil action, let him change it with his hand by taking action. If he cannot, then with his tongue by speaking out. And if he cannot, then by the heart, his heart, by hating it and feeling it is wrong. And that is the weakest of faith," end quote. Now, according to this hadith, and another follow-on one as well that David Wood explains, true believing Muslims everywhere in the world, and that means right here, right now, all across the United States, are obliged, they're obligated to strive. That's the English translation of the Arabic word, with hand, with tongue, and with heart, against those who fail to obey Allah's commandments. Allah's commandments are encoded in Islamic law, or Sharia. And it doesn't matter if those failing to obey are Muslims or not, because Sharia is meant for the entire world, whether we like it or not. And when any of us, be we Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu, or anything else, fail to obey a commandment of the Sharia, Sharia holds us responsible and empowers, obligates even Muslims to take action to correct that failure to obey. Okay, now the word for strive, which is the way many translate this from the Arabic. The Arabic, of course, is what? It's jihad. Jihad. And jihad is for the purpose of imposing and enforcing Sharia. Now, it includes kinetic warfare to terrorize the unbelievers. Think about Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, Hezbollah, Taliban, right? Subversion. Here, think about the Muslim Brotherhood, which is not terrorist at all. It is subversive. Think about promotion of Sharia-compliant finance. Ah, yes, think the U.S. Treasury Department. And then, of course, information operations, which we might think of as a kind of subversive effort, subversion operations, but sometimes we'll call that taqiyya, right? Dissimulation and deceit to lead the gullible astray. Think taqiyya by posers who only pretend that they really oppose Sharia, right? And then keep in mind, of course, that every Muslim, well, just about every Muslim on the face of the earth, because they learn this at Mother's Knee, knows that amputation, beheading, crucifixion, execution for adultery, apostasy, and homosexuality, flogging, sex, slavery, these are all part of Islamic law that every single Muslim on the face of the earth is obligated to enforce, or at least to promote, again, by hand, by tongue, by heart. All right. Now, every informed Muslim, let's put it that way, who was listening to Joe Biden's speech, especially here in the United States, where they have opportunity to learn and to know the faith through madrasas, through going to the mosque and listening to the sermons, certainly the internet. In America, they're informed. And everyone informed Muslim who was listening to Joe Biden's talk understood that he was encouraging them to wage jihad against non-believing Americans. Now, as I said at the beginning, I think we can be pretty fairly well certain that Joe Biden himself had no idea what he was actually saying. But just as certain that the Muslims listening to him now know that he can be made to say whatever they would like to hear. The words can be put into his mouth if he can get them off the teleprompter, that is. To me, this is very, very worrisome, dangerous situation. Now, let me conclude here on a final note, and that is to say, I think we need to ask ourselves, how did this particular segment, the Hadith segment, find its way into Joe Biden's speech? Which advisor, which speechwriter made sure that that Hadith came out of Joe Biden's mouth? Well, how about senior Biden advisor Farouk Mehta, whom we now know is a Muslim Brotherhood operative sitting on the board of EMERGE USA, a key member of the US CMO. I will refer all of you, besides my own article, to one written by a Matthew Edwards. And that was published at a Jihad Watch on the 1st of July. And it's called Islamic Movement Influence Operations Target Biden Campaign. If you go back to Jihad Watch and look for Biden campaign, this will surely come up. And he covers it quite well. So tip of the hat to Matthew Edwards, as well as David Wood, for tipping me off and getting me started on looking into this. So the fact that Joe Biden has no idea who is inside of his campaign or what's coming out of his mouth, that's bad enough. But here's the further question, and what I'm wondering whether the Trump campaign understands any of that, or if there is anyone with the possibility to brief him on it. I know he's occupied with a whole bunch of other things right now. I get that, but it seems to me this being a key point of the campaign would be an important thing to include, at least in a comment or two in some campaign speech, or maybe we save it for the debates. Well, if there are to be debates. In any case, let me stop there. And I thank you for your attention. I thank you for joining with us tonight. And I welcome any of your questions if you have any. Thank you.
Pretty frightening, Claire, for him to be a candidate, not knowing who he is, where he's at, and to have that kind of an advisor. We're in trouble.
We really are. Yeah, but I mean, here's to show us all how well prepared, well organized, and well funded the other side is. We've got a lot of catching up to do.
We did have a question, and it was a thought I had when you were describing the tier of Hamas, CARE, all of this. Is there anywhere where there's a chart to show where it started, kind of the years? You've seen how they do with marks, and they've done that.
Yeah, you know, that would make a very good visual, wouldn't it?
It would.
I described it in words in my article, but I did not make a graphic out of it, but that would be a very good idea to do. Yeah.
Okay.
It's easier sometimes to see it, you know, visually like that.
Oh, yeah.
I agree.
Do you think that's something you could do, or is that
Yeah,
something?
I could. Yeah. I'm gonna make a note right now.
And then we could get that shared out everywhere.
Mary, you want to take a few more comments on what Claire had to say before we move on?
Yep.
Okay, so my observation, Claire and Mary, when I watched the high quality, high production quality video that was produced by EMGAGE, which is the quality of it, in addition to Joe Biden, as he was talking, as they were communicating, they showed pictures of Ilhan, Rashida, Linda, and our friend from Michigan, Abdul El Sayed. They didn't show other people. Those were the 4 people that they showed. The implication for me was that these people are operatives. They're not just going to be, in my opinion, being a representative in a tyrannical government. You know, the Congress is not particularly relevant. So I would look for these people to take on czar roles. So you can imagine what Linda Sarsour would be the czar for whatever. Abdul could potentially be a czar for health, given he's a doctor. And of course, you know, thinking ahead to what might be coming out of a single payer system, he supported that for years. He's written at least 65 articles that we've talked to people about. Yeah. All of his articles are on the inequality of healthcare.
Yep.
So it's precisely Black Lives Matter. It's precisely everything else. So my thought was to watch those 4 people inside of a Biden administration. It's kind of passé for them to be representatives or just out there when they could be inside the inner loop in roles as czars, the way Obama had.
Well, let me take us back a few years and pick up on what you just said, Dick, with Ilhan Omar. Folks might remember that even while Ilhan Omar was still a Minnesota state representative, before her election to Congress in 2018, back in 2017, she met one-on-one with the president of Turkey, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, in New York. I think it was on the outskirts of the UN General Assembly that September.
Right.
And folks might remember or think that prior to that point, the Somali community in the United States was not part of the Brotherhood. They've always been a bit separate. They're not Arabic speaking people. They have their own language. They have their own distinct culture and had remained apart up until that point. Ilhan Omar met with Erdogan, and very shortly thereafter, the Somali community of North America, meaning US and Canada, joined the US CMO. So she's already operating on the inside.
The other comment would be to watch Erdogan right now, as you do so well for us, Claire. Erdogan has been increasingly aggressive.
Yeah.
He has troops, financing troops in Libya. He continues to speak about being the global leader as well. And so his connection on all these fronts, including with Biden himself, should be really troublesome.
Agreed. I mean, he and his senior advisors, senior officials in his government openly, and for years now, speak of jihad and of reestablishing the Ottoman Empire. He's got troops. There are Turkish troops, advisors, funding, and proxies in what used to be called Syria. They're in northern Iraq, which we may recall, these parts used to be part of the Ottoman Empire. And Erdogan funded the transferal of something like 3,000 to 4,000 Syrian jihadi fighters out of that battlefield area over to Libya back in the turn of the year, December 2019, January 2020. Those 3,000 to 4,000 joined with the Government of National Accord in Tripoli to fight against the forces of General Khalifa Haftar, who is allied, this is complicated, I know, but with Egypt. Russia's helping them, and the Libyan National Army is what Haftar calls his forces. But Haftar is fighting against the jihadi forces that got put into power by the Obama administration and NATO allies when they helped to overthrow Gaddafi back in 2011. And now Turkey has entered that battlefield, as well as threatening neighbors like Greece, which is part of NATO, but also Cyprus, which is not, and laying claim to all kinds of natural resources, especially natural gas, lying underneath the Mediterranean between Libya and Turkey, Greece, Cyprus, and in there. Very aggressive. He's going to have to be stopped. Erdogan is going to have to be stopped at some point. He's not going to stop by himself.
Well, what about the huge mosque that's here in Maryland that he came over a couple of years ago and dedicated? I mean, what kind of forces is he building there? Right.
Well, that place, which it has a website called DNet. I think it's DNet USA. In any case, if you looked up DNet, DIYANET, you'd find it. Is a 16-acre compound in Lanham, Maryland, where in 2016, just as you say, Mary, Erdogan came over and dedicated the opening of that site, which includes a humongous and very gorgeous mosque. There are also meeting rooms, convention halls, guest quarters, all kinds of other amenities scattered about the 16 acres. But this is the important part. The DNet, as we call it, the DNet, first of all, is a piece of government property of Turkey, belongs to the cabinet level department in Turkey called the DNet, which means the cabinet level Department of Religious Affairs. But that is the hub there in Lanham, Maryland. That is a hub of operations between Turkey and the U.S. Muslim Brotherhood. In particular, the Adams Center from Northern Virginia, all Dulles Area Muslim Society Center near Dulles Airport. That's their hub of operations. I am very concerned the Trump administration has no idea what that really is.
The other point about that mosque, if I'm not mistaken, a mosque might be $3, $4, $7 million. That mosque is over $100 million paid for by Turkey. The government of Turkey to put a footprint right there outside the capital.
12 miles north of Washington, D.C.
And
that's all.
I believe, am I remembering right, didn't Obama welcome him when he came over and did that?
No, it's very interesting. This happened in the summer of 2016. And Erdogan did come over with a delegation, including Airbus, who is the, what do we call him? The director of the DNet cabinet office in Turkey. They all came over with a large delegation, but Obama did not attend the ceremony.
I thought he did.
It was curious. He did not. We thought he would, but then he didn't.
Wow.
One last thing about Erdogan, there was an article out this week about young people in Turkey figuring out if they want to have a life, they want to have any level of freedom, they might need to leave. They might go to Europe to progress. If they stay in the country, the statistics were amazing. There's been like 400,000 websites blocked. There's been like 7,000 Twitter accounts. The numbers are striking. So this man is running, he's basically running a tyrannical government in there.
Yes.
And so to the extent that he could reach into America and influence through imams connected to mosques that he may have paid for, et cetera, it's pretty terrifying when you match that up to Joe Biden.
Well, and as you say, Dick, there is a network of mosques subordinate to that Diyanet Center in Lanham, Maryland, at least 3 dozen. I haven't counted recently. That was a while ago, 3 dozen or so. New mosques, Islamic centers up and down, primarily right now, up and down the East Coast, meaning from as far north as New England. I think the furthest south one might have been down by like North Carolina, last time I checked. And every one of those mosques is subordinate to the Diyanet Center in Lanham, Maryland. In other words, to the Turkish government.
And one last thing on the mosque, we have 3,400 or so. We get concerned about Seattle as an autonomous zone or a revolutionary city. Now, people are beginning to talk about revolutionary districts, different places around the country where it's over. The administration of those city councils, it's done. Whether it came from Black Lives Matter or Antifa, those are captured territory, autonomous zones. Well, the 3,400 mosques are certainly autonomous, and they're certainly revolutionary. So we really need to add that number. And the notion is if Antifa can be called out to Louisville or Portland, these imams can pretty much call out people if they really wanted to. When it's time, these mosques could be part of the kinetic activity and the violence if and when it gets.
That's a very ominous and true point you're making, Dick. I'm opening up this briefing, the set of notes I keep, and you're talking about talking about the Islamic movement, Muslim Brotherhood here in the U.S. becoming more kinetic. Let me just note just a few of the list I've been putting together. Let's go back to March 2020 this year. And a lot of this I get from memory. Wonderful service, Middle East Media Research Institute. A Chicago imam by the name of Omar Baluch called upon Muslims in his webinar, Jummah Khutbah, called on American Muslims to arm themselves because he said, and this is on video, because your neighbors, your Trump-loving neighbors, might not love you all that much, quote unquote. Let's fast forward, 5th of June, just around, 2 months ago now. The ICNA, Council for Social Justice, declared a day of outrage when imams were instructed to give the Friday khutbah on police brutality and structural racism in America. End of June, this is now a little more than a month ago. Al-Qaeda, listen to this one. Al-Qaeda issued a statement and translated by memory and published by memory, called on American Muslims to revolt against unjust rulers. That wording is significant because it is the exact same wording that was used by the Muslim Brotherhood leadership in Egypt in 2010, right before they triggered off the Islamic uprising of late 2010 into 2011. Same words, revolt against unjust rulers. And then very recently, only a few days ago, about a week ago, last one I'll give you here, Islamic State released a video, thanks to memory again for the sourcing on this one, released a video, Islamic State, urging American Muslims to unleash arson attacks against the United States, other Western countries too. So this is going kinetic in a way that we didn't see this previously.
The other side of that is the FBI has trained Muslim communities that I'm very familiar with on active shooter training. They've encouraged them to arm themselves, and that same FBI specifically mentions white supremacists. So This is back a year ago, prior to, Black Lives Matter, but the white supremacist message has been there. As you remember, our friend Filippini told us in October that in September, the DHS have revised their position on terrorism in America, and they added white supremacy specifically. So the Muslim community is targeted at protecting themselves from white supremacists.
Yes.
Well, do we want to go? I think because you've engaged so much of the discussion around EMGAGE and USCMO and CARE in terms of the election cycle and what we need to worry about with Biden and who's advising him. One of the things that I think we should bring to light is the work that Stephen Kirby is doing with the Muslim Oath Project, and you helped him get the book published. When he wrote the articles that he had written separately, you combined it, worked with him. Fantastic piece of work, just fantastic piece of work that you did with him, Claire.
Thank you. He did it. It came, I noticed it, that's all. He's a brilliant scholar and a really nice writer, very easy for an editor.
What he's been doing, and I think we've talked about this a little bit in the last couple of weeks as well, is I'm going to show you a couple of things. What we've got is on the Sharia Crime Stoppers website or webpage. Of course, we're live right now, and because I don't have it running, Claire's got a little bit of a smile, but these are our past webinars as well. But this is the Muslim Oath Project. Let me see if I can expand this a little bit to make it look better. The Muslim Oath Project is Stephen Kirby, and if you go right here, you'll see that I've got it in a playlist, and we are now on number 8 in this entire list. Stephen is recording 6-7 minute videos to make it really concise and easy to watch and understandable. And this is his 8th one right here, and I have number 9 yet to be put in, and I'm going to do that probably tomorrow. But look at this, the Islamic doctrine versus the 13th Amendment versus the First Amendment. Folks, these are all about how you can talk in any kind of a setting with your Muslim candidates to ask them how they can possibly support the U.S. Constitution. There is no way they can swear to both the U.S. Constitution and their Allah, Sharia. And this is what he talks about, and how you can go about questioning them in multiple settings that you have an opportunity to ask your candidates. When they speak, they are not speaking facts because they can't. How to deceive non-Muslims. Islam and taking an oath. They can't. They can't take an oath to the U.S. Constitution to support and defend it. So folks, all of the videos that he is doing are here. 8 of them. You can find them on our YouTube page as well. But one of the key things I think everybody needs to know is that his book is free. It is called Islamic Doctrine versus the U.S. Constitution, a Dilemma for Muslim Public Officials. And we have it available here. Stephen was kind enough, and I hope my computer does this correctly, over on our resources and training page. I have actually got it. We've got multiple things, but here it is. This is it. Stephen has given me permission to actually put it here and let you download it or even just read it from here. So it is available. It is free. It is something you can, it's 221 pages. If you wanted to print it out, here's the download. It is so critical for all of the candidates that are Muslim candidates and running in any kind of local community, all the way up to U.S. representative or the senators. So I wanted to tell you about that. We've got another page. We're starting a new campaign under the United West. I'll just briefly say a little bit about this. This is a web page that is a little bit under construction at the moment, but Tom is going to be interviewing David Horowitz weekly. This was the first video. We just did a new one today. David Horowitz is so amazing. Basically, this is a campaign to say that Christians must vote. It's a spiritual battle for America, election 2020. So folks, we're going to be filling this in with a whole lot more information and details and videos and posts. But somebody said this, and it was so, it jumped out at me. It's not about the donkey or the elephant, it's about the lamb. We need Christians out there voting, or we're going to lose this nation. And this is a little bit about the campaign. I'll let you take a look at this at another time. But here's a resource again. If you hear Christians talk about not being, that they can't get their heads wrapped around being political because their Christianity tells them they can't. Folks, here's some web pages that you can go to that'll tell you you are required, you are needed, you must stand and vote. So I'm going to stop this and then we'll go to the Q&A. Dick, unless you've got something else you want to say?
Well, I do see a big capital DONATE there. The donate button is there. We want to remind everybody, you know, Claire's connected to the United West. Mary, of course, does a lot of good work for them. We have been blessed, Sharia Crime Stoppers. We live on that website. So if this is stuff that you're interested in, take a look at, you know, Steve's work, take a look at Tom Trento's work with the new campaign. And the donations are extremely important right now for the remaining 3 to 4 months of this year. So it's just a comment to donate. Before I forget, Claire, do we have an LLC? Do we have the Clare Liberty Lopez? Is that donatable yet? The website.
Well, I wish I could say that it were. LLC, of course, is not a 501c3. I incorporated as an LLC, but if anybody were so inclined, a donation could be made, and I could contact me, and there are 501c3s that would assist them and me to get a donation to me. It would be most welcome, but I don't have a website yet. Working on it, just haven't had enough time to get it up and running, but intend to as soon as I can.
It is a lot of work.
This is one team, one fight, and we just appreciate your attendance. The numbers tonight are through the roof. Again, thank you so much. And it's time to take action. The donate button is part of that action, as well as other things that we talk about. Mary, you are loaded with questions. I'm going to be quiet.
And they are still growing. There's probably, oh my gosh, look at that. It's skyrocketing over on YouTube as well. So let's see if we can get through this. What about Jetpack?
Yeah, Jetpack is likewise an offshoot of CARE, and it is expressly formed to identify and back and groom and promote at the ground level. This is a very ground level organization. Muslim candidates, especially young candidates, that would be favorable to the Muslim Brotherhood.
Okay, of course we get this question a lot. How can we get you at the president's table?
Well, from your lips to President Trump's ears, I guess. It's been tough to get that kind of access. It's just been tough. Not that we're giving up. And as he wins a second term, many of us are hopeful that those channels might become easier to navigate. But we're very hopeful on that. So we're not giving up. We're going to keep trying.
How come the FBI has not reinstalled Spencer's training? Any ideas on that?
Not reinstalled
Robert Spencer's
training. Oh, Robert Spencer. FBI? Well, because they're too busy looking for people who aren't wearing their masks. And arresting fathers playing t-ball with their little daughter in a park all by themselves.
Isn't that the truth?
No, I'm being facetious, but the problem really is that the FBI is thoroughly and completely penetrated and co-opted by the Muslim Brotherhood and has been for a long time. I don't know how to fix that without dissolving the FBI and starting over again. There's no way, there's no chance that's going to be turned around under current leadership, or indeed the broader issue of reversing what we call the Great Purge, right? That removed all these fantastic instructors like Robert Spencer, John Guandolo, Steve Coughlin, Bill Warner, from their, teaching, instruction, briefing positions they'd had before that. Before that meaning, well, it started under the Bush administration, but really culminated, I'd say, in the 2010, 2011 time period. So, yeah, that has not been turned around yet. And certainly the FBI is not going to be the one to do it.
Yep, yep. Somebody's asking, what does emerge mean?
Emerge was an acronym. Let me go back up here. Okay, emerge originally stood for empowering, motivating, and educating resourceful grassroots entities. But you don't have to remember all that because emerge, remember, 2014 changed its name, and now it's much simpler. It's just EMGAGE USA. And that's the website, emgageusa.com.
Do we know, I guess when USCMO formed?
2014.
Yeah, 2014.
Same year. That's I think, significant.
I thought that was supposed to be like the umbrella of all of these organizations from the political standpoint.
Yes, it is. And that's why EMGAGE is part of the USCMO.
So they still have all of their little pieces underneath it. It's not
yes.
They're running their candidates through the USCMO.
No. They haven't merged organizations or blended organizations. They've merely collected them, if you will, under one umbrella, which I suppose, helps with leadership and messaging and things like that. But each organization still remains discrete, distinct, its own organization.
Yeah, I used to think that it would be good for us being, the United West, Tom Trento's always had one team, one fight. Always thought it'd be good to have like a central commander anyways, just leading the troops and but the more I think about it, being in pieces like they are, they don't work like that.
Well,
in smaller groups, and you can't attack them all at the same time.
Right. And even at the same time, they're all on point. They're all on the same message because they all know exactly what the doctrine is, and that's Islam and Sharia.
Yeah.
And so they're all on the same page of music without having to have that general or an emir, which may emerge at some point along the way yet.
Well, what can be done to get politicians to understand what EMGAGE is all about and how dangerous they are?
Well, thank you for asking that question, because this goes right back down to the local level and local level races. Those local races are incredibly important. Yes, we do focus a lot on the higher level, Congress, let's say, or state legislature, maybe. But think about school board, okay? For example, one little silver lining to all this mess that's going on and the kids out of school and being taught online, the parents out of work or having to stay at home with those kids to elementary level anyway, is that the parents have now gotten to see what's in the curriculum, what those kids are learning, because they have to be with them and help them with it, right? And those parents, I've been in touch with different organizations and groups of parents and individual parents. They are furious at what they're finding. And the other thing is that local school board meetings are also now being held online via webinar, and the parents more easily now can participate. And they do, and they have been, and they're furious. So in a way, this is a little bit of a silver lining, but the point being, local school board is so important to know who is being elected to those boards at the very local county level. That goes also for local elections for something like library board. Who brings in all these hairy monsters to do story hour in the libraries? It's your local library board. So what you can do, if you have the time, the inclination, you want to do this, maybe with some friends and neighbors, is to get together and pay attention to those local races. City council comes to mind also. And either, get behind new, young, fresh candidates who reflect your values and beliefs, that are approachable and you can talk to, or established ones who are running for re-election, likewise, that reflect your beliefs. That's what you can do most importantly, I think.
Okay, we've got a couple questions asking you to explain the BLM connection with the Muslim Brotherhood, but I think you talked a little bit about that in the beginning.
Yeah, I'll give you just one vignette maybe that I think should put it all in perspective. Back in December of 2015, MAS ICNA, Muslim American Society, and ICNA, Islamic Circle of North America, held, as it always does, its biannual joint conference. And this took place in Chicago, Illinois. And the whole, speakers list of Muslim Brotherhood leadership figures was at that conference and spoke. Nihad Awad, executive director of CARE, was at the MAS ICNA conference, again, December 2015, looking at that point ahead to the 2016 electoral cycle. And Nihad Awad gets up there and in front of the cameras and the microphones, you can look this up, it's on YouTube, it's not been taken down, it's up there. He says, Black Lives Matter is our matter. He explicitly aligned CARE, that is Hamas, that is the Brotherhood, with the Black Lives Matter movement. And I mean, we could find more examples, but that's the most graphic immediately and very visual. And it's from that point forward, these last 5 years, that 5.5, that they've been aligned together.
Okay, well, here's a good question, I think. How can we tell if a candidate has Muslim Brotherhood backing or is a member? Is there any qualifier?
Well, I mean, it would take some time, and that depends on whether you actually, have this kind of time to do this. But to go to the web, look up the candidate, look up whom it is that endorses that candidate, look up social media of the candidate, and look what kinds of postings are at Twitter, Facebook. I don't think you have to worry about Parler. Twitter, Facebook, maybe Instagram. Look up whom it is that posts and on those social media sites of that candidate, and what kind of events, for example, are advertised, because they always do this. They'll put up the advertisements for upcoming events, see what events, see who's sponsoring those events. And then just, a little bit of homework on the name of that individual candidate themselves. And believe me, it doesn't take a huge amount of time. And it depends on yourself and how much time you individually have to do this. But sometimes it kind of just pops right off the page at you very quickly.
Yeah.
You can also go to the Federal Election Commission for congressional races. You can go to, I think it's called Islam Watch. And you can actually see, I mean, this is so bold. It's such a big part of Americans' fabric. You can see CARE as the donor to congressional candidates.
Oh,
you can
right.
say, isn't it? You can just see it there. You can see CARE, and then you can see the gentleman who actually wrote the check. We've done that, and we found one gentleman who owns a company, a medical company in Michigan, gave $110,000 to well-known candidates, including Republicans, and he put it through CARE, through ISNA. They do it.
Yeah, it's the Middle East Forum, MEF, Middle East Forum, tab, Islamist Watch.
Yeah.
Now, never mind the names. Never mind the names, but you go to that website. It's very useful. It's what Dick just said. They have to post the names of their donors and how much money they're getting from them. It's very revealing sometimes.
Yes, it is.
What are your thoughts on bringing treason charges against Obama for aiding and abetting the Muslim Brotherhood?
Well, I mean, the first thing that you would have to do is the Muslim Brotherhood is not listed or banned or barred or anything. So what's the connection?
That's true. That's true. You have to do that first.
And they're not terrorists, so you can't put them on the foreign terrorist organizations list. They've never once in their entire history committed a single act of terrorism against the United States or Americans, so you can't put them on that list. So what are you going to do? In my opinion, what we ought to be doing, but aren't, is using already existing laws, not necessarily treason, but using laws like sedition, which is the call to, or the support for, aiding and abetting the overthrow of the United States government. Seditious conspiracy, that would be working together. Conspiracy also use the RICO statutes. There are a lot of laws, material support to terrorism. Anybody that pays their zakat, any mosque, any Islamic center that openly advertises, any 501c3, goodness knows, that advertises that it collects and distributes zakat, probable cause right there, the affidavit writes itself, if somebody had the knowledge and, well, the vertebrae to do that. So I think we have plenty and enough of existing laws already in the Title 18 Criminal Code. We don't need any more laws or any more imagination. We just use the laws we've already got in the books. But
And the fact that we don't have those indictments is a real criticism of our leadership. It's criticism of how deep Obama put so many operatives inside the civil service, inside local organizations. We have really just learning how deep he implanted the agenda-driven people. So the lack of those indictments says a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, those seditious laws that are on the books already could be used in just about every mosque.
Right, if local law enforcement were actually allowed to monitor what goes on inside the mosques, which they are not.
Well, I keep coming back to memory, though, like you said, and they're capturing quite seditious information.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, this particular individual named Omar Baluch is on film.
That's right.
But, but again, okay, I mean, you have to be careful with this. What did he do? He urged Muslims to exercise their Second Amendment rights, is what he did. It sounded terrible, and we know what he was after. But he was urging Muslims to exercise their Second Amendment rights.
Right there on the fence. Just teetering. Trying to keep it safe, yeah. Oh, man. Well, let's do this as the last question. Why don't we hear more about Erdogan? Say it for me. I'm not saying it right.
Erdogan.
Erdogan. Thank you. I knew I didn't.
Yeah,
say
don't pronounce the G.
Erdogan's troop movements in Libya. It's as if he's in his protection.
I do see it, but that's maybe because I'm looking for it and I follow those things. But let's see. BESA, the Begin Sadat Center in Israel, publishes on those topics. You will find writers like Barak Bekdil, a Turkish writer, publishing at places like Gatestone about things like this. Where else have I seen it? Besides ordinary news outlets, which you can find, the Reuters, the even Washington Post, New York Times, slap my mouth for endorsing them, but never mind. Where else have I seen? Those might be the best. Gatestone, the BESA Center, BESA, Begin Sadat Center. You can get on these mailing lists just by signing up. I'm not sure if Jihad Watch has published anything on this, but I'd go look there.
Okay.
It's possible they have. I know I'm missing some, but it's out there. If you do a search, you'll find it.
Okay, Dick, you want to close us out?
Sure. Again, this is what we do, and Claire does such a superb job. Her news analysis is unique to her. We're so grateful for that. Claire will be back with us in 3 weeks on the 24th of August. Next week we have Leo Holman on the 10th, Christine on the 17th, Claire again on the 24th. And we have also Dr. Mark Christian on the 27th. That's our special Thursday night. I think there's 92 days, Mary, to go, something like that. So this is getting very serious. Yep. And even though we're focused on the election, which is critical, we are continuing to remind people they need to be protected, be prepared for their own personal safety, their own protection, and for their family. Things are dicey. And you just need to be aware and think of the word preparation, if you would. Certainly doing everything you can for the election is part of that. Preparing for your own personal safety and your family would be more critical than ever, perhaps. So with that, Claire, do you have a final comment you want to give us?
Well, I'll just encourage folks, if you would like, you may follow me at Clare M. Lopez, my name, C-L-A-R-E, at Clare M. Lopez, at Twitter, same thing, at Parlay, and my name also at Facebook, and then watch at Sharia Crime Stoppers, the United West, Citizens Commission on National Security, for my writing and videos. Also, occasionally I'm publishing at my blog at Newsmax, the Newsmax blog site. And I will be picking up again to do some more videos with Barry Nussbaum and Annie Cyrus at American Truth Project within the next week or so. So I thank you very much for following those places if you'd like to find my videos and my writing.
Also at Brannon House, right?
Oh dear, yes, I should have mentioned. Yes, thank you for remembering. Brannon House at Worldview Report. Worldview Weekend is his main platform, but if you want to follow writings and videos, Worldview Report, and that's where my things are. He is just beginning now to get out a series, an 11-part series that I recorded some time back about Hezbollah. Hezbollah in the Western Hemisphere, and especially its cell networks here in America, what Hezbollah is doing at the behest of Iran. So do take a look at Brannon House's worldviewreport.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Claire. It's been very enlightening as always, and very educational. So
thank you.
We hope everybody will share these videos, because obviously this information needs to be not just in our hands and not just in your hands. Please get it out to all of your local politicians, your local community.
And the one-liner to take away tonight is Claire's comment about Joe Biden committing himself and his administration to full support for Islam and its commitment to destroy us. So thank you, Claire, for that, making it crystal clear. With that, we'll say good night and invite you to join us again next week. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, all.
Thank you all. Good night.